Hey, you ever get nostalgic for old school fantasy? Maybe it's time to scratch that itch. What's going on, everyone? Michael R. Schulteis here, author of the Rostoval Saga, which you can see, as always, on the shelf behind me. Today I'm coming at you with my review of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. This is book one of The Bound and the Broken. So I'm going to summarize this one by saying if you've read a lot of the older school of fantasy, the stuff that was popular in the 70s, 80s, think Terry Brooks, maybe David Eddings, this is kind of a familiar story. Stop me if you've heard this before. We have three young men from a humble village who go on an adventure, and there's magic, and there's a dragon, there's an evil empire ruled by a very bad guy, and there are plucky rebels who want to fight back against the empire. But they're going to need the help of the elves and the dwarves. If it sounds familiar, there may be a reason for that. But let's press on here and find out how this book stacks up. So the way that I always do this is we talk characters, we talk plot, we talk world building. I give an overall rating, and then we discuss who is this book for, who is it not for, and that's that. So number one, characters. This aspect of the book was, I think, very well done. We have Kaelin, Dan, and Rist, three young men who are friends, and they are kind of the main show here, but we have other point of view characters as well. These three young men feel like three friends. And I love the sense of camaraderie, the adventures, the different roles that they kind of play in this little tribe of theirs. It was very well done and very charming. We have some good supporting characters as well. On the whole, I felt that everybody was developed, was a part of a story, and, felt like a real person. In fact, one character, I won't say who, ends up with the evil empire. We get some hints that maybe they're not as bad as you might think, although I'm waiting on that one because this is only book one and there's a lot we don't know. So on the whole, the characterization is pretty much a win, pretty solid. Let's talk plot. The story does take some time with setup before the main plot gets going. It's kind of a slow burn. That's not a bad thing. I think that it does set up the characters and their world pretty well. It mostly worked for me. There's also plenty of action once things get going. So I have to be forthright, this story was not the most original. It felt a lot like the kinds of stories that I've read before. More the classic kind of 70s, 80s fantasy, the quest trope, all that. But it was engaging. And I did keep turning the page. Okay, world building. To me, this felt, again, a lot like the kind of world that I've read about in kind of Terry Brooks, David Eddings, Tolkien. Kind of think of the whole Tolkien imitator genre that was very popular 70s, 80s, and beyond. I found myself reaching for some comparison, some points of comparison with Lord of the Rings, with Aragon, and even Song of Ice and Fire. There's a dragon. There's an emphasis on control of the dragons that felt familiar, but it was still a compelling and rather beautifully realized world. So again, admittedly, it didn't break a lot of new ground, but it was engaging. And from what I've heard about these books, they get more original and better as the series progresses. So I guess we'll find out. So what to rate it? Well, I'm landing on a 3.5 out of 5. This is a good book. It kept me turning the pages, and I think even with the point that I made about originality, it's still well done. It's still quite worth your while if you like that kind of traditional fantasy vibe. So on that note, let's talk about who is this book for and who is it not for. Well, do you like Tolkien? Do you like the Tolkien imitators like Terry Brooks? Maybe David Eddings? definitely give this book a try. It's totally for you. I think you'll find a lot to like here. There's some modern sensibilities in the mix too. I think that I'm waiting to see what happens with the evil empire. It's called the Lorien Empire, and the Dark Lord figure is called Fane Mortem. So I'm waiting to see if it's everything that it looks like, or if there's maybe some more complexity there. I don't know. We'll find out. It has this whole aspect to it that reminds me of how fantasy used to be back before 2000, and I'm probably dating myself here. I'm 38, so if that appeals to you, want some nostalgia, or maybe you just want something that's maybe you haven't read some of those authors, but you like the idea of a fantasy world where there's more of a straightforward sense of good guys you can cheer for and bad guys who you're opposed to, with some question marks there. We'll see what's up with this empire, if they're as bad as they're cracked up to be or not. Definitely check this out if that's the case. Totally for you. Now who is this book not for? Well, maybe you like darker fantasy. I'm a huge R. Scott Baker fan myself. Maybe that's more your jam. Brian Lee Durfee is another one. If that's more where you want to hang out, you like that level of kind of violence and ambiguity, and that's kind of where you thrive. It's where I thrive. This book might or might not be for you in that case. But again, I think there's going to be tremendous appeal here to people who love epic fantasy. This series has a tremendous fan base already. So if you like epic fantasy, I think there's a good chance this book could be for you. So how about you? Have you read Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill? Do you want to read Of Blood and Fire? Let me know in the comments. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us to grow the channel, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will hope to catch you on the next video.